Hello, Sue here. Right, I want to talk about my Aunt Emily. She was not an aunt. She was a long-time friend of my mother's mother. So she was Aunty Emily as part of the family, but she was not actually related at all. And Aunty Emily was a little tiny, thin lady. And from the time we knew her, she died in her 90s, and we known her all her life. And so I always remember her as a little grey-haired, kindly lady. So that, again, is echoes of kindness. She came, right, the Lister family was in the RAF, so we moved around the country and we moved abroad and then we came back again. But every Christmas, Aunty Emily would come to the Listers for a Lister family. So it meant that the Uncle Norman and Lorna brought her down from Bradford, and then wherever the Listers had happened to end up, we would drive to the middle of the country and bring Aunty Emily back to our house. And we would then have Christmas together. And it was just this calm, kindly presence from the north, Aunty Emily, who came to us every Christmas, but made Christmases Christmas, and they wouldn't have been the same without her. And we were an atheistic family, and all I remember is Aunty Emily waking us all up in the morning on Christmas morning, and we all went and sang outside my mum and dad's door, and guess what we sang? Christians awake! And anyway, so there, Christians awake, salute this happy morning. So we all sang with great gusto, and that woke mum and dad up. And then we all the kids went creeping down the stairs first, to see what Santa had brought and left under the tree for us. And it was all so exciting. So Aunty Emily was part of our lives. Now, when I went to Leeds University, it's not far from Bradford, and Emily was still living in Garnet Square. Now, Garnet Square had these little mill houses round the edge of the square, and the toilets for everybody were on the end of the square. And Aunty Emily lived in this little one up, one down room. So the downstairs room was the living room, the kitchen, the dining room, and her bathroom, because she used to get bathed in a tub in the sink. That was her bathroom, because remember that, and the toilet is out at the bottom of the square. So she was actually living in a slum, and the council took it upon themselves, for the good of the city of Bradford, to knock down Garnet Square. And they moved Aunty Emily out, and I get quite emotional about it. They moved her out of the home that she'd known for the last 90 years. She used to work in a paper bag factory, and she used to have glue on her fingers, ripping the skin off when she came back home at night. Anyway, that's Aunty Emily, and she lived in Garnet Square. And they moved her to a nice little bungalow, a council flat, a council bungalow. And they moved her there, and she didn't know anybody, and she fell ill, and she died there, and nobody found her for 2 weeks. Our Aunty Emily was by herself and died by herself. And that inspired inspired me to care about people living alone. And that's where Aging Without Children lit a fire of determination that people should not live and die alone. And I wrote a little haiku verse in one of my shows that I did for Real People Theatre, and we did a show talking about things that had affected you in your life and turning points in your life. And I wrote a little haiku, 3-line. Garnet Square, Bradford, 1960s. 93 years living alone and counting her blessings. Slum clearance killed her. And that's the story of my Aunty Emily.
Inspiring is my mother. And this little story is just one example of the things that she would do. When I was about 8 or 9, I took my school report home. That's a good report. My parents were very pleased. But there was one little comment by the maths that absolutely infuriated my mother. I had done reasonably well. I can't remember the exact position that I was in the class. Perhaps 3rd, perhaps 2nd, perhaps 4th, you know, but high up in the class. And the teacher's comment was, a very good result, especially for a girl. So the next morning, about 8:30, we were in the teacher's classroom. And my mother, I can't remember the exact words that she used, but she was absolutely incensed, and how dare anybody say such a thing? It was not encouraging. No. So I always remember this happening, but when my mother died a couple of years ago and my sister and I were clearing her house out, we were looking in a jewellery box, and inside the box, I found a school report, but it was a school report that was written in my mother's handwriting. And I don't think I'd seen it before, but what she had actually done was got a blank copy of a school report from the teacher. She had translated all of the marks onto that, but she had omitted the offending comment. So my mother was always one to encourage women, belonged to lots of women's group, was encouraging of all sorts of activities and people. And that was a very early sign of the way that she encouraged me to know that I could do as well as I could do, whether I was a boy or a girl. It was not, and it did not affect how I did in maths. So thank you.
Hello, my name is Anne. I was born in December 1940, and 6 weeks later I was adopted by Jack and Ruth Murray. I had a wonderful, wonderful time. I started playing sports, playing baseball with the boys when I was about 8 or 9. And then I started tennis, and the couple of years that I was a junior, or juvenile, I guess, they were building a huge 4 badminton courts on the existing place on the area that I was playing tennis. So my mom and dad said, why don't I try badminton? So I thought, sure, that's good. So I did, and that was when I was about 14. And when I was 15, I was asked to go and participate in the Canadian Junior Badminton Championships in Montreal. So my mom and dad said that was great, and they would support me. And I went, and I was runner-up to the winner. And then in 1956, that was 55, 1956, my dad died at home, and he was only 52, and I was 15. And then, so I went, and my mum said, I must go to the second one of the Canadian Junior Championships. I must go. And I said, I can't go. My dad just died. She says, no, it's important you go, which I did go, and I was runner-up. Then I won it 4 years in a row, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, and 60. And what I'm telling you about this badminton, I was always in sports. I played tennis, anyway. The one thing that my mom and dad believed, and it stayed with me all my life, is when I started to compete, and I was generally winning, and I lost a couple, but I was generally winning, they said, anyone can be a gracious winner, but if you can't be a gracious loser, don't play the game. It's only a game. And that has stayed with me all my life, because I went on to win nationally and internationally. I played badminton up to 2007. I played for England. And that sounds I'm boasting, but I don't, it stayed with me, all these things that my mom and dad taught me. It's just a game.
Hi, I'm Fran, and I'm inspired by the previous speaker, Liz, and also many other people. But I guess my main story of inspiration is of my father. And it's a bit of a weird one because I was inspired by him after he left my mother, which most people are disappointed about. But I admired him and was inspired by him because he'd waited for 30 years before he decided to leave because he was unhappy. And he left our lovely home and took himself off to a tiny little bed sit that was so small. It was one of these that had the double bed folded down at night. Or you folded up in the morning, and that was your space. And there was a curtain across the corner of the room that was for the shower. So it was a very, very small, cheap little place because he didn't really have any money. And he told me that he just danced around the room going, I've done it, I've done it, I've done it. And it was sort of following his conviction that he needed to do that so much. And he's a very pragmatic person, and he very much inspired me.
So learning that my father had waited 30 years before he actually did what he really wanted to do in his life inspired me that when I reached the age of 60, I was going to ride my bicycle because that's what I wanted to do. And I'd expected that I would get my state pension when I got to 60, but the British government had a different idea for me, and I won't get it until I'm 66. But I was so determined, and I'm sure that was from the inspiration of my dad. So I still left at 60 and did my cycle trip.
But also I've been inspired by, I've only been in York for 2 years, and I'm so inspired by all these older people that I've met. I've spent my life being the oldest person in my friend groups, and everyone else is younger than me. And now I'm not working, they're all still working, and I'm here in York. And there's just these amazing people. Some of them I'm sitting here with in this room is Sue Lister, Anne Murray, Vicky Crossfield, who left a message earlier, who's an amazing cyclist at 84 years old. People say that I'm inspiring, but I am being inspired by all these amazing people. And then yesterday I joined a woman who leads Rides for Women, a group called Breeze, that's a national group. And I've been out with them in Brighton, but not York before. And I met this woman in Poppleton, is that right? Poppleton. and ended up just being the two of us. And she's done a lot of cycling, and only in the last couple of years. So she said that she was living, or she lives with two men who take advantage of her, not in a physically abusive way, but that, you know, expect her to do all the women's jobs around the house. And she stopped work because her salary was paying the mortgage, and they paid the mortgage off. So she said, right, and she'd been very ill. So she said, okay, I'm not working anymore. She got herself a touring bike, a tent, and all the kit that you need, and took herself off to the continent and cycled around for 3 months by herself, never having camped before, never having done such a trip like this before. And you came back to the UK, came back home to find that her husband had paid for a cleaner to come in, somebody to come and cook for them, somebody did all the ironing, and you know, she was like, okay, that's great. And then they're chatting, and he says, well, now you're not working, what are you going to do for money? She said, I've got a spreadsheet, and I will invoice you at the end of each month. And now she charges them for all that work, the housework, whatever that she does. And that was, yeah, impressive stuff. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Vicky, 84 and still cycling in all weathers. And I'm inspired every day, most of the time, because I find total inspiration in everybody I meet. I always want to know what makes them tick, and that's always very interesting. I decided to talk about the sky of all things, whereby I look at the sky when I get out of bed in the morning and before I go to bed at night, and I'm just full of wonder. And when I lived abroad, it gave me great comfort because I thought, well, the same skies over my mum and dad. So we've got a link, even though I was living a long way away. So that was nice. And I'm going to tell you about 4 episodes regarding the sky. And one of them, I was in like a church school, an old-fashioned stone building. And this little boy, aged about 5, said, please, miss, the sky is black. So I had a look, and sure enough, it was black. So I said, right, we're all going to stand in the porch, which was a great big stone porch. So we all stood there for a solid hour. We wouldn't be allowed to do it nowadays because you're supposed to follow the blooming curriculum. And we just watched it develop, and the thunder and the lightning and everything. And then when it was all over, we went back into the classroom. And I thought, that's real education, as it should be. That's number 1. And then number 2, forgotten. Number 3 is when I was in Canada, and I was on the mouth of the St. Lawrence River, and it was solid cloud, which is exactly what I cannot stand, solid cloud. And I spoke to a local, and she said, oh yes, it's like this over 300 days a year. They hardly ever saw the sky. And I thought, how do they live there? I just have to move, even if I didn't want to. And then number 4, because I've still forgotten number 2, was also in Canada. And this was in the north on the Hudson Bay, on exactly the same line of latitude as Carlisle in England. And it snowed in about October. And then it never snowed again for another 5 months. And so for 5 months, we had blue sky, sunshine, and white snow. And it was absolutely fabulous. And then every evening, we had no radios or television or anything. We used to go outside and watch the Northern Lights, which was absolutely fabulous. So that was absolutely great. So those are my 3 stories out of 4.
Singing inspires me. My name's Julie. I live in York. I have sung at school and I enjoyed that. And I sung in an amateur dramatic group in Ireland. I have enjoyed singing at home ever since. I sing every day at home, and I enjoy listening to the radio and singing along, and it just makes me happy. And I feel like inner happiness is very important, especially to help with my mental health issues. And I know how singing and music benefits other people. And I just generally like music. And that's it. I have taken part in 3 online choirs since, well, within the last 5 years. And the vocal coach for one of the online choirs, Mark DeLissa, was the vocal coach for The Masked Singer, the TV show. And then there was home choir that's only on YouTube, and I interact with other participants and be able to type to them, and then we sing while we're all on mute. And then there's sofa singers, which I've been part of for a few months at least, and they have an open mic session, which I've sung a few songs on, and I've really enjoyed that. And that's all that has inspired me.
Vincent van Gogh, the mad artist who cut off his ear, yet produced distinctive and highly influential artworks that have influenced many artists, including myself. I first learned of Vincent van Gogh in my teens when I saw the film Lust for Life with Kirk Douglas as Van Gogh. The film heightened his life story, but it was the depiction of his intense devotion to art and his willingness not just to record, but also to experiment and develop as well. It was when I was learning to paint and draw again after a long period of 15 years that I came back to Vincent van Gogh. Van Gogh always wanted to record what he saw as truthfully as possible, something I've tried to do. And where Van Gogh's vivid colours stemmed from his time in Arles, France, and its sunlit landscape, my use of colour is throw everything to the canvas and hope for the best. How has he inspired me? Take a look at his 1888 painting, Café Terrace at Night. You expect it to be dark and in shadow. Instead, the colours are bright. The sky and buildings receding into the distance are blue, and the terrace is an inviting orange and yellow. Green can be seen amongst the yellow and in the tree in the foreground. And Van Gogh doesn't shirk the detail, from the people either walking or sitting, the table legs, and the cobblestones on the road. Now here's my painting of Glastonbury Tor, which I did last year. It's a night scene. The only darks can be found in the silhouette trees and the Tor. The foreground, with the path and long grasses, is bright, white, purple and blue. And like the terrace, leads you into the distance with the black Tor against a deep blue sky and the faint red, orange and yellow of the sunset. Just as Van Gogh included stars above his Café Terrace, there is a tiny crescent moon in my sky. From interest to study to developing my own painting style, that is how Van Gogh has inspired me. Thank you.
What I'm going to share is a film which is actually quite new one. It's a 2024 film. The title of the film is The Room Next Door, starring Tilda Swinton and Julianne Moore. Okay, and I briefly, talk about the plot and then I will talk a bit about why I find it's a bit inspirational for me. Okay, the plot is it's very simple. Martha, actually there are two main characters, Martha and Ingrid. Martha was a war journalist, and she got the terminal cancer. Okay, and she is based in New York City. Okay, and Ingrid is Martha's friend and also ex-colleague. But actually, I don't think they are very close, because Ingrid knew about Martha's illness just by chance, because Ingrid is also an author. So in one of her book signing ceremony, she came across another colleague, and then that colleague told her about Martha's illness. So that's why she went to hospital to visit Martha. Okay, and then one of the things that Martha, after several visits and conversations, and then Martha, asked Ingrid to consider something, because the treatment to Martha didn't work out very well. Okay, so Martha, didn't want to linger on, so she's going to do something not very nice, not legal. At least in the state of New York. She got some sort of pill from the dark web. Okay, so that she can take the pill, and then she will go clean and dry, in her words. Okay, but it's very interesting. She has she made a kind of request to Ingrid that she wants to have a friend with her when she did that. So her plan, so Martha's plan was, she's going to go to the countryside. A bit outside the New York City, and they rent a place, a really beautiful country house place. And then she and Ingrid will stay there maybe for about 1 month or something. And then Martha will choose a day to take the pill. Okay. But, because it's kind of illegal, in the state of New York. So that's why she didn't want to get Ingrid in any trouble. So that's why she asked Ingrid to stay in another room, so that, she would not be crashed. Hopefully she will not be, charged with accomplice in that kind of a suicide or something like that. Okay. So, when Martha sent out this plan to Ingrid, at the beginning, Ingrid didn't want to go ahead. Okay, because for several things. Okay, first of all, as I said, they were not really that close. They're not really very, very close friends. Okay, they're kind of ex-colleague who has lost in touch for several years already. Okay. Second thing is that Ingrid herself has a big fear of death. Okay, she didn't quite buy the idea. Okay, so that's why she asked Martha, to reconsider and maybe think about, to take on the treatment again, something like that. And then, so that's why Ingrid, asked, whether Martha, would ask somebody else. But Martha told her that, she already asked several of her childhood friends, but all of them turned down her request. So that's why she had no one else except Ingrid. So that's why, I think, Ingrid was very kind. And so because she thought that, she thought that Martha had no one else to turn to. So eventually, in the film, she agreed. And then, a main part of the film was how they spent the last month together in a very beautiful country house in New York. Just outside the New York City. Okay, because I don't want to go into details about the film. I'm not going to do the film review. And actually, to be honest, the film itself was not a very excellent film or something like that. But what I find very thought-provoking for me would be oh, actually, what is compassion? What is love? Okay, if I were Ingrid, would I do the same for my friend? Because it's not. I don't. I don't quite really agree to the idea. That kind of you can name it assisted dying or whatever. Okay. So and that I might be in kind of a legal trouble, right? Because even though I told the police, I just stay in the next room, but it might not be that I would be very clear of that kind of thing. I may be still kind of a charge with the accomplice in that kind of suicide. So I may put myself in trouble. So that's why all along the film, I just wonder, I just still question, okay, what make Ingrid decided to go along with the plan? Is it that kind of compassion? Okay, is it that kind of support that we have to give to our friends or maybe to our family members? Okay, here, I want to make it clear that I don't want to argue, whether I favor assisted dying or not. Okay, this is not my point here. I mean, at this time, okay, it's not my point. But I just wonder, just think about just why the compassion is because of my religion and also because of my health condition now. Okay, so all this would be quite immediate to me, quite relevant to me. And actually, personally, right now I'm surrounded by many friends and many neighbors who try to support me. But then I crashed. Then after this film, okay, what kind of a support? What kind of love? What's this genuine support? What's the genuine love? That kind of thing. That I don't have any answer, but it just very inspire me. Should I keep my mind very open? Even I may put myself in trouble. Okay, so I just go out, roll up my sleeve to help. Okay, so this is something that I have something in mind. So that's why I found it very inspiration to me very recently. Also very relevant to my situation.
I just very much wanted to speak about a lady who I found inspirational, perhaps for the oddest reasons, but I was working at the time in Nottingham. My job was for social services. I was a reablement support worker. That means you go into people's homes to help them. And I met this lady. I'm not going to say her name, though I would very much like to, because she was an AWOC, and it's occurred to me, no one will be telling her story if I don't. So I go in and I meet this lady, and she lived in a council house, and it was round about the year 2000 at the time. Okay, so 20 odd years ago. She lived in a council house and she lived downstairs. She never ventured upstairs. She was very lucky. The council house she lived in had they'd left the downstairs toilet in. A lot of them had a downstairs toilet and a coal house. So she was able to live quite comfortably downstairs. And on this one particular occasion, I went to see her. It was winter. And the skylight at the top of the stairs, which was made of glass, had blown off and was lying in the garden. And the snowflakes, big snowflakes, were falling softly on her red stair carpet, and she was oblivious. She didn't know. She had no idea that this was happening. Anyway, she was a very lovely, dear lady, and as I got to know her and her story unfolded, I found it very fascinating. This lady was born in a place called Burton-on-Trent, which is kind of, I suppose, the Midlands. I think it was a beer making place. Anyway, she was born in the year 1900. So when I came to meet her, it was the year 2000. She was actually 100 years old. And she told me a tale about she could remember very distinctly at the age of 14 or so, all the men in their community just vanished overnight. And this was the start of the First World War. And the long and the short of it was, in the First World War, a whole generation of men, young men, were lost. And it created a great imbalance in the population. And a situation occurred where an awful lot of women couldn't find a husband. Now, this lady, she'd been told as a young person that she wasn't bright. She would never come to anything much. She wasn't intelligent. And of course, young people, it's what you tell them is what they become, you know. If she'd been told she was marvellous, she'd have been marvellous. Great emphasis was put on the fact that you had to find a husband because husbands were in such short supply. And the tragedy of it was, you see, she spent her whole life trying to find a husband. Now, she was a wonderful lady. She could have done anything she wanted in the world. You know, she was so bright. But she spent her whole life living in a series of rented rooms. And she just thought that, you know, you had to... The only goal was to find a husband, and if you didn't find a husband, you were a failure. And it was so terribly sad. But the thing I loved about her was she was so interested in things and so engaged, and we had some wonderful conversations. And there was one day we were chatting away about something, and I just happened to look across at her, and I was trying to think to myself, you know, what is it that's so marvelous about this woman? And I realized what it was. You know, as many of us get older, we become very set in our ways. We become very set in our opinions, and in a way, the shutters come down. You know, we get very fixed and we closed off. And I looked across at her sideways as she was talking, and inside my own head, I said to myself, oh my goodness, her mind is wide open. And that to me was the most marvelous thing. And the fact that, you know, no matter what you encounter in life, what hardships you go through, if you can keep a free mind, nobody can imprison you, nobody can do anything to you. They can't get at that free mind. And that's the piece that's worth hanging on to. And I think the gas van has just drove up outside. May I be excused?
I am not here physically with you today, but I am certainly here with you in spirit. I was recently struck down by a very unpleasant, painful, and debilitating medical complaint, resulting in my lack of mobility and need to rest as much as possible due to lack of sleep. I live alone, so have no one to help me with even the most simple tasks of everyday life. However, I have been inspired by the unflinching help of two close friends who have shown exceptional fortitude in offering help to keep me going, plus a third long-term friend. I do not wish to embarrass anyone here today, so let's just refer to these wonderful friends as S and A, without whose help I probably wouldn't be alive today. A third long-term friend, whom I shall refer to as M, arrived a few days after shingles developed with a large pot of homemade chicken soup and a number of homemade meals. Wonderful. They have supported me to doctor's appointments, pharmacy collections, food shopping, and a myriad of other everyday tasks, all undertaken cheerfully and without question. Their acts of human kindness are to be applauded and have inspired me to write this note to enable me to say a very big thank you for all they have done over recent weeks, especially beyond belief. Exceptional beyond belief, especially as they have so many other calls of a similar nature on their time. I doubt I will ever be able to repay their random acts of human kindness, but I do want them to know how much their help has been appreciated. It goes without saying their random acts of human kindness have been appreciated from the bottom of my heart.